Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 5 of the 2022 Tour de France. Guys, it's the Cobblestone day at the Tour de France. You know you have to tune in. I'd recommend watching every bit of video you can see on this stage, but if you're here on the Butterfly Effect, you might as well hang out for another few more minutes and watch the end as I give you the details here of the exciting stage 5 Tour de France. Now, when this stage starts, the preparation for this stage starts a long time ago because all of the teams are setting up special technical equipment and sometimes completely different bikes, completely different tires. The bikes can be softer, the gearing can be different. You can go from electronic shifting. In my day, they brought us back onto cable shifting in 2014 to make sure we didn't have to rely on the electronic stuff. I don't believe that's happening nowadays, but in my time, that's how much the bike was changing. 2014, I was riding a completely different bike. I was riding fatter tires, and I was riding cables on my bike for Lamprey. So this is a big day, and there's a lot of stress. Now, when the racing starts at kilometer 0, it's not going to take very long before it's Magnus Cort Nielsen, the KOM jersey wearer here at the Tour de France. He's already been on the attack on just about every stage and every kilometer here at the Tour de France, and he's going on to Cobblestone stage 2. Now, we know EF Education has some form because earlier Neilson Powless, the American rider, gave an interview, and he said in the interview, all the riders for EF Education are basically doing their own stuff today. They're not going to look after the young American for say, as every rider here gets a chance at doing something crazy here at the Cobblestone stage. When the reporter asked Powless what was his objective on today, the young American rider said, "Hey, I'd like to be top 10. Okay, that's a big saying here for a kid that's never ridden the cobblestones, but let me remind you, he's got a very good resume. He went 5th at the Road World Championships in Belgium and won himself the Classic of San Sebastian. So this kid's got some power, but we know EF Education are in for something, and when we fast forward back up to the break here of 3 riders, Magnus Cort Nielsen are showing that EF Education are motivated today. Now, those 3 will get up the road. It'll take just over 10 kilometers, almost 15, before another group of 3 finally arrive up to the front group to make it a group of 6. Let me remind you guys, the peloton this whole time for 10, 15 kilometers is full gas at every point in time, trying to bring back those original 3 riders up the front with the KOM jersey Magnus Cort Nielsen, until finally the peloton sits up, the group becomes 6 up front, and it's 2 EF Education riders because Neilson Powless from EF Education, he made it in there with his teammate Magnus Cort Nielsen. Now they got a little more company in the form of Total Energies, Edvald Boasson in that front group, and Simon Clark is the last rider to make it a group of 6 up there. Now, let's take a look at this group of 6 really close here, because 5 out of this group of 6 all have Grand Tour wins, and Edvald Boasson is one of the older guys up here along with Simon Clark. They're well into their 30s, but they still all have Grand Tour wins with the exception of the American kid, Neilson Powless. But like I told you, he got 5th at the Belgium Road World Championship, so we know he's a player. With this group of 6, they are working magnificently together, and they are going fast. The first hour of stage 5 of this Cobblestone of Tour de France is covered in just under 52 kilometers an hour. The peloton behind is nervous throughout the whole day, and we'll see carnage as it's the Cobblestone day here at Tour de France. Now, with 95 kilometers to go, this is when Wout van Aert, Jumbo-Visma start having some problems as they come into the roundabout. Wout van Aert, there's a slowing and island in the center of the road. Wout van Aert and his teammate Steven Kruijswijk tangle up, and the 2 riders go down. Wout van Aert looks like he's a little bit hurt, but he must not have slidden much because there's no road rash on the Jumbo-Visma rider that I can see from the film and from the pictures later. Now, next obstacle for Jumbo-Visma riders off the back is there's no cars in front of him. Steven Kruijswijk's getting a little upset right now. I can only assume the officials are back there, or he wants the camera motorcycle to get out of the way so he can get a little help. We're going to see Jumbo-Visma car slot in front of him, and that's going to help these guys out to get back up to the caravan just for a couple seconds. Now, when they're in the caravan proper, it's Wout van Aert, Steven Kruijswijk that are just behind the DSM car when all of a sudden the DSM car hits the brake. Wout van Aert straight into the back of the DSM rear panel of the car, slides down the driver's side, probably taps the driver mirror there, and somehow holds the bike up just in time to get it out of the way of the red official car in front as he leans the bike all the way to the left and saves another crash here on the Paris-Roubaix course. Now Steven Kruijswijk and Wout van Aert will finally get back up to the peloton, but it'll take them about 12, 13 kilometers before they see the tail end of the peloton. Now up front, as we start getting closer here to the first cobblestone, it's starting with 77 kilometers to go. There's 11 sections and just under 20 kilometers worth of cobblestones here to finish out this stage 5 of the Tour de France. We're on the cobblestones now, and things are getting interesting because it's Alberto Bettiol, EF Education on the front. Alberto, what are you doing? Are you a knucklehead or what? You got 2 teammates in the front group up the road. Now, I know Nielsen Palace said all the EF Education riders here basically had free reign to do whatever they want, but I don't think that entailed chasing down your 2 teammates that are up the front. Bettiol, he's on the front, and yes, you could say maybe he's trying to keep his teammates out of the way, but he's going full gas, and the time up to the leaders, let me remind you, because Nielsen Palace at this point in time, he's getting near taking the race leader's yellow jersey from Wout van Aert. He started at 1 minute and 20 seconds back from the race leader here, and 7 seconds behind him is Edvald Boasson-Hagen, the Total Energy rider that's in the break. So there's a lot of math to work out here, because let me remind you again, when we look at UAE Team Emirates, Tadej Pogacar, he's not that far down on general classification either. Now, Jumbo-Visma is looking solid through these first cobblestone sections, always up front, always looking in a solid position, but nobody's looking better than Tadej Pogacar from UAE Team Emirates. But he does have one problem with UAE Team Emirates, because they're starting to lose some riders off the back due to crashes and efforts throughout these first 5 stages here at the Tour de France. AG2R is not looking too fantastic. Ben O'Connor's with a few teammates and they're off the back. When we look at the back of the peloton, there's 3 more AG2R teammates up there, and they're going off-road and to the left of the side of the gravel road here off of the cobblestones even. They picked a rougher road than the cobblestones as their teammates back there chasing, and AG2R are having some problems on the back of the peloton. Now coming up next with about 38 kilometers to go, this is when we're going to see Mathieu Vander Poel struggling and coming out the back at this point in time on stage 5 of the Tour de France. Let me remind you guys again, we haven't seen Mathieu Vander Poel do too many of the tactics that we saw throughout just about every stage of the Giro d'Italia, including his stage win in 2022. Must be he's feeling the effects and haven't gotten his legs back under control as he's coming out with 38 kilometers to go. Either that or had a mechanical or some kind of accident throughout the early part of this stage, because now he's coming out with 38 kilometers to go, and this was a big time favorite to win here on stage 5. There's going to be a lot more action, so sit down, strap the seatbelt on, grab some popcorn and a Coke, because there's a lot more to talk about now that we're in the cobblestones proper. Next problem here is going to be Jumbo-Visma. It is Jonas Vingegaard that's having a problem. Looks like he's got a chain problem. All of a sudden he stops in the middle of the road. Nathan Van Hooydonk, his teammates, switching bikes with him, and we're going to see Jonas Vingegaard jump on the bike. It's too tall, and real quickly at this same point in time almost is Steven Kruijswijk pulling over. Steven Kruijswijk knows his team leader here has a bike problem with it being too large. They're going to switch bikes, and Steven Kruijswijk's going to hop on Nathan Van Hooydonk's bike while Jonas Vingegaard hops on Steven's bike. Now they start riding again, only to find out that's not working, and Sepp Kuss is coming into the picture. Everybody's pulling over to the side of the road, changing bikes, as we see the team car from Jumbo-Visma all slot into the picture at the same time. This was a comical moment right here, because we're going to see Jonas Vingegaard running across the road, Steven Kruijswijk leaving the bike on one side so he can grab his bike that he just handed to his team leader Jonas Vingegaard, as the guys who have gotten dropped is shooting through the gap with the Jumbo-Visma riders running across the road. The team car's there, the mechanic comes out, hands Jonas Vingegaard another spare bike as Jonas Vingegaard takes off, and at that same time as he's getting pushed, we look on the right side of the road, Steven Kruijswijk's grabbing his original bike. We look on the left side of the road. Nathan Van Hooydonk, who was riding Jonas's bike after fixing the chain problem, is now jumping back on his original bike, and Sepp Kuss is there. Now, Wout van Aert's going to jump in the picture too as he's flying by in the group that was dropped, looking over his right shoulder thinking, wow, that's Jonas Vingegaard. I'm not certain what I got to do, and he keeps staying in that group. Now, Jonas Vingegaard has some teammates that are looking after him, trying to pull him back up to the front, and then Wout van Aert will drop out of that group and come back to help Jonas Vingegaard. Wout van Aert was something amazing from this point on to the finish here on stage 5, looking after Jonas Vingegaard. Up front in the GC favorites, we saw all kinds of action, but Tadej Pogacar was always in the golden child seat here as he was perfectly placed during all the early cobblestones here on stage 5. We saw with Vlasov's team, Bora Hansgrohe, they rode the front many times when Jumbo-Visma was starting having problems there. And as we're back on the pavement, sometimes here during the Paris-Roubaix course, the pavement is more dangerous than the actual cobblestones. As the GC favorites are flying through the roundabout on the left side, the only problem is the organizers blocked off the center of the roundabout so the riders can't jump onto the curb there and over straight through the roundabout. When they go left and they loop around, as they come out, there's a big hay bale in the middle of the road. It's FDJ rider that clips it with his pedal, moves it a little bit more, and then when we look in the picture, there's Lotto Soudal, who was having an amazing ride here. Caleb Ewan, the sprinter, looked like he was going for a shot here, winning the Paris-Roubaix stage 5 of Tour de France, until he clips the hay bale and it takes him out. Along with Caleb Ewan's going to be Primoz Roglic that goes down. We don't see him in the picture, but we will see him here very, very soon. But not until going on the right side of the roundabout. I want to show you who went right. Of course, it was Tadej Pogacar, UAE team members, because this kid can't do anything wrong. When it's 50-50 going through the roundabout, he gets lucky, picks the right side that's clean. Lucky, or did he see the chaos that was happening on the left? I don't know. But he shoots through the right. It's a clean lane. He makes it all the way through and stays in the front group of GC favorites that is very motivated, with Bora Hansgrohe doing a lot of the work. When we see Jonas Vingegaard slide through this roundabout, now when we look at the picture, there's cars parked at the front there trying to protect the riders who had crashed Caleb Ewan, as Jonas Vingegaard flies through with a Wout van Aert just drilling it here. They're not going to wait for Primoz Roglic. The next picture is Primoz Roglic chasing hard. I'll show you. He makes it into the caravan that's just behind the Wout van Aert Jonas Vingegaard group. But guess what? Jumbo-Visma don't wait for him. They will send back some help for Primoz Roglic as a few of the team riders drop back. Wout van Aert, Christophe Laporte, though, they stay with Jonas Vingegaard on the front, with Wout van Aert putting on a display of force here. Up front with about 45-second gap, though, is Tadej Pogacar and Vlasov's Bora Hansgrohe team. Now, Tadej Pogacar with about 27 kilometers to go. He threw in a little bit of acceleration after an attack on the cobblestones by guess who? EF Education. Bettoli is throwing in a massive attack, his second knucklehead move here on stage 5, because let me remind you, he's got 2 teammates in the front. And that group that was 6 had one rider drop off with Alexis Gougeot, whose legs finally blew. And then we see a little bit of problem from Simon Clark as he's gapped from the 4 leaders in front. Simon Clark from Israel Premier Tech will get back up to that group of 4 to make it 5 guys up front, and behind Tadej Pogacar, who just got done lighting it up, is going to have a little more help because we're getting just around 20 kilometers to go. And it's Jasper Stuyvens there from Trek Segafredo who's throwing in a big attack. Now, this is a classic specialist. He is on good form. Mads Pedersen had done some crazy attacking earlier to try to jump this gap when the gap was still way too big at 3 minutes. But now Trek Segafredo have the right move at the right time, as it's Jasper Stuyvens up there throwing in attack. And guess who's coming along for company? You got it. It's Tadej Pogacar. He's latched on, and the 2 riders are putting on a display here as they're leaving the Bora Hansgrohe Vlasov group behind. Now, all the riders were starting, all the big GC riders, that is, aside from Vlasov, were starting to have some problems. He had a little hiccups throughout today's stage, but other than that, Vlasov has looked pretty solid, along with UAE team members Tadej Pogacar. But the whole Ineos squad have gotten lost, and they're all back there with the Wout van Aert group that's pulling 100% to try to bring back Tadej Pogacar and Vlasov up front. Now we get up to the front leaders that now become 5, because Magnus Cort Nelson on the last cobblestone section, it's been too much for him. He's been out in the wind too long here at the Tour de France, talking stage 2, stage 3, and here at stage 5, the guy has been there every stage here at the Tour de France. Now he's coming off with just about 5 kilometers to go as they exit the cobblestones. It's 4 riders in front. And guess what? At this point in time, when we're talking about EF education, the American rider, Neilson Powless, he can take yellow, he can win the stage, or he could lose it all because Edvald Boasson from Total Energies is in there, and he's only 7 seconds behind the EF education rider. So if he attacks and gets a gap, or he wins the stage and Neilson Powless doesn't get the time bonuses, it'll be Edvald Boasson that will take the race lead and the stage here, possibly still at this moment with about 4 kilometers to go. Their gap at just about 50 seconds to Tadej Pogacar, and over a minute to the Wout van Aert group that's chasing hard. Wout van Aert's been exceptional. He's had some help, but most of the time when the cameras come back, it's Wout van Aert pulling crazy back there for Jonas Vingegaard. Now up front, let's go, because it's 1.7 kilometers to go when the games start here in the front group. Before you had to know it's coming, right? Because the other 2 riders in this front group, they're not racing for general classification. They want only the stage here, and that's Taco van der Hoorn and Simon Clark from Israel Premier Tech. As those 2 riders start sitting on, with Boasson sitting on EF Education. Powless, this was brilliant. I mean, he didn't hesitate at all. He knew right away that there's probably rare that he's going to get yellow. So instead of pulling all the way to the finish and risk getting jumped by Edvald Boasson and losing the stage and the jersey, he's just not going to work. That forces all 4 riders to start rotating through. They're not pulling through now as magnificently as they were throughout the stage. But at this point in time, when they still got a solid gap on Tadej Pogacar and a possible chance of getting in yellow still, because Wout van Aert is still chasing back there, and the gap is still just around a minute's time. Up front with 1.3 kilometers to go, this is when we're going to see Neilson Powless start to drift off the back. We see the riders in front of them start to look over their shoulder. As soon as they look back, bam, there you go. Neilson Powless starts his acceleration and throws an attack with 1.1 kilometers to go. Up front, Boasson, he's got stuck on the front seat here, the hot seat, and none of the riders behind, Taco van der Hoorn or Clark, that's sitting on his wheel, will take a pull. With about 900 meters to go, now the gap is starting to get big up there to Powless, and Edvald Boasson, knowing he's the one with the most speed in his legs in this group, he's up there and he has to start his kick. He comes out of the left turn, now it's 800, he's in a full sprint here to try to bring back the American rider up front. He catches them at about 400 meters to go, but at this point in time, Boasson legs, they're starting to blow. Simon Clark was super intelligent and skilled at this moment. He opens up a gap to the Boasson, and then Taco van der Hoorn comes around to start to close it. When Taco van der Hoorn comes around, Simon Clark solidly jumps on his wheel, and then Taco van der Hoorn has the lead with about 250 meters to go. Right after that, we start seeing a drag race with 100 meters to go. Both riders, Taco van der Hoorn, Simon Clark, their legs are starting to fall, and it's a big bike throw from way out before the line as both riders are exhausted. Their heads are down. They can't see where they're going. Somehow, magically, they keep the bike upright, and it's Simon Clark that gets the stage win here for Israel Premier Tech. A fantastic win for Simon Clark. He's 35, I believe, turning 36 here pretty soon. So he is certainly a veteran and well deserving of the stage win. Edvald Boasson will cross the line 2 seconds behind the duo up front for third to round out a podium, and then Neilson Powless, the American rider, will lose 4 seconds, but still be in a fight here to take the race leader's yellow jersey. We got to wait just a little bit as Tadej Pogacar crosses the line 50 seconds back, and then we still have another wait because it's race leader Wout van Aert that's pulling the GC favorites back there. What's left of them anyways, all the way across the line to lose 1 minute and 4 seconds to Simon Clark, who won the stage. Now, while Wout van Aert's crossing the line, we got to wait some more because Primoz Roglic is still back there. He's going to lose over 2 minutes on today's stage. That's going to put a massive dent in his hopes of winning this year's Tour de France. Again, the cobblestones at the Tour de France have had a devastating effect on the general classification here, and all of it's down to just bad luck. Flat tires, crashes, roundabouts with hay bales put in the middle of the road basically, and then chaos everywhere is what's affecting the general classification. But Wout van Aert will hold on to his race lead just by 13 seconds to Neilson Powless. Now, if I remind you guys, if we go back to Bettiol pulling not once but twice, That's probably 13 seconds, right? Today's stage had chaos everywhere, but I know in my book on the butterfly effect, it's Bettioli that's the biggest knucklehead here for EF education. When I look at Jumbo-Visma, their tactics were spot on today's race, and if I'm nitpicking, I could say possibly they could wait for Primož Roglič, but other than that nitpicking, I'm saying Jumbo-Visma did a fantastic job. Each one of their riders should be praised, and the director in the car was magnificent to have all the riders and all this chaos still come together, keep Jonas Vingegaard close to Tadej Pogacar, who only lost about 13 seconds on the general classification to the two-time Tour de France champ, and Primož Roglič, when it's all said and done, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, possibly you can make it up if there's some tactical mistakes made by UAE Team Emirates, or Tadej Pogacar is left isolated. Maybe he lets Primož Roglič go up the road. Guys, make sure you like and subscribe. This was an amazing Stage 5, and we're coming up into the mountains here, starting really soon here at the Tour de France. So I'll see you on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect.